it was just after high school for me when my grandparents, Grammy and Pop is what I called them, started to get weak. They were having trouble making meals. Actually, there's Grammy and Pop on the left. They started to get weak. It was harder for them to get around, harder for them to make meals. And my parents had actually just moved into a new house, and they looked at the situation and saw that, okay, they're not going to be able to be on their own for much longer. And they saw the mobility thing, they saw they couldn't drive anymore, and it was actually becoming kind of dangerous for them to live by themselves. So there were several choices to be made. One choice, leave Grammy and Pop on their own until they either get sick or hurt, and then let a hospital deal with them. Two would be to find a facility that would care for them. You can go and visit. There's still a relationship, but there are professionals that will care for them and make sure that they're safe and make sure that they're getting meals and things like that. Or the third choice would be to actually take them into their home and let them live with my parents. And what my parents decided to do was, in this new house that they bought, they decided to add on like a whole wing to the house, and Grammy and Pop moved in with my parents. And they cooked for them. My parents cooked for Grammy and Pop, and they made sure they got their medication. Eventually, it came to my mom bathing her mom and dad, which I remember as a young person, and still, I mean, I'm still not that far into this stage of life, but thinking, wow, to bathe your mom and dad. And remember, and like the younger you are, the more you probably think about like I wouldn't. Whatever your emotions are, it's okay at this stage in life. But I remember when it started to happen, I'm like, wow, my mom, their daughter, being willing to give her mom and dad a bath, make sure that they're clean, to cook their meals, to clean up when there was a mess. And Grammy and Pop lived with my parents until they died. And they died in their bed, in the room, in the part of the house that my parents had built on, so they weren't alone. And I just remember like watching that and just going, wow, what a model for caring for somebody. And then I saw it again with my wife, Laura, with Laura's grandpa, with her mom's dad. That's Tata in the center. And it's actually, is Bobby here this morning? I didn't see. But anyway, that's Bobby's great-grandfather. So that's Tata, and don't worry, he's just holding the beer for Matthew. But he got to a point, I mean, he was like 96 years old. And he lived alone, and again, it became one of those things where it wasn't safe for him to be alone. And so Laura's parents moved him in and cared for him and helped him until he died. And then most recently, Grandma and Papa, that is Laura's dad's parents, lived down in San Clemente, and a few years ago started to get sick as they got very elderly. They were both over 90. And Laura's parents, instead of moving them into their house, Laura's parents basically moved down to their house in San Clemente. And they would stay for days and then come home and get some business done and then go back. And just to watch the sacrifice of Laura's parents, of all the driving back and forth. And again, the bathing and the caring for and the tenderness and the compassion that they showed to their parents who were not able to care for themselves and who needed assistance, who needed help. And it got me thinking, going like, okay, is that just, well, an option? You can if you want to. Just out of is it only, like, if you feel like it, Is it only if you feel guilty enough? I mean, what was it that compelled them to care for their parents that way? And the reality of it is that this is something that we see in the Bible. Now, I want to tell you this. I'm always so anytime there's going to be a message, I want it to be practical, and I want it to be something where you can walk out of the room and apply this to something in your life, which there's going to be some of the practical today. There's going to be some things that you can think about and consider how can you implement into your life today. But today, I want to challenge you to think at a really matured level in terms of letting your heart begin to consider some things that you're not going to have to do right now. It's not expected of you. It is not a pressure on you. It is not something that you have to decide right now. It's not something that you even have to worry about. But I think that this is something that's really important at any age to begin considering in your heart, what do we do for those who are not able to care for themselves? What do we do? Where does our heart go in our willingness to do whatever we can do for those who can't help themselves? Because it can certainly be easy. I mean, it's actually, and it happens where, oh yeah, Grammy and Pop, they're sick. Oh man, I'm not taking care of them. Yeah, whatever, At some point, paramedics will find them. That's the mindset that some people have. But what I encourage you to do today, like I said, this is not a pressure on you right now at all. These are not decisions you need to make. But this is something where I want you to consider it going, where am I going to set my heart? Because you are going to have the opportunity to care for people who can't care for themselves now in your own contexts. And that is going to help shape your response to things in the future when you're in the position like my parents or like Laura's parents, where they need help. And how have we been thinking about it? So I'm asking you to kind of think farther ahead, but setting our hearts in that way is going to also impact, decisions that you could even make for right now. But this is actually a biblical command, that we love those who can't help themselves, that we care for those in need. The Bible actually tells us to do that. So if you're here this morning and you call yourself a Christian, the Bible is pretty clear that it's not if it's convenient, if you feel like it, if they, if you like them enough. This is a biblical command that we are to care for those who can't care for themselves. We are to care for those who are in need, beyond ourselves, beyond our own circumstances. And what does that look like in your life? Because it's clearly in the Bible. And one of the things that, there's a couple different categories. One is, as the church, we are called to care for others as family, even when we're not related. Some of you in this room are related. Some of you, you have a brother, you have a sister, you have a cousin. Okay, in this room, you're related. But most of us are not related. And it's clear in God's word to us, and in all kinds of places, that we're to love each other, we're to care for one another as family, even when we're not related. That it's not just the people that we have a familial bond to, but it is the people all around us. And in this letter that Paul is writing to Timothy, he addresses this issue of how to care for those and the expectation of caring for those around us and what that looks like. And it's really cool. It's actually very practical. He says this: never speak harshly to an older man, but appeal to him respectfully as you would to your own father. Now, there's an assumption here, right? There's an assumption here that you are talking respectfully to your father, right? Which is also a command in the Bible. You are so he's basing it on that, going, look, you know that you're called to honor your father and mother. Okay, so that's a standing order. So with that being understood and assuming that you are obeying that, he's saying this: never speak harshly to an older man, whether they're related to you or not, but appeal to them as you would your own father. If it hasn't happened yet, it will. It's the way that you respond to your grandpa or your grandma when they tell you the fishing story again. Now, hopefully, no one's in here going, dude, shut up, old man. Right? Where's your heart? In the immortal words of John Christ, check your heart, right? Never speak harshly to an older man. When something's frustrating you, when someone's in your way, when they come on, just get going. Getting angry at older drivers, okay, is a weakness of mine, and I try. But this is, you want to talk really practically, this is one of the ways this plays out. That Paul reminds Timothy, hey, you need to tell the church, tell them this, never speak harshly to an older man, but appeal to him respectfully as you would to your own father. When you walk outside here, how are you interacting with the people who are older than you? Okay, this is actually a great topic for this group. This is a different kind of message than I would give up there. Kinda. But this is a really practical thing because practically everyone is older than you, right? Practically everyone is an older man, right? And woman would also apply here. How do you treat them? How do you respect them? When they frustrate you, when you're tired of them, when you don't know why you have to go visit again. How can you respect them? How can you respect them? Because disrespecting the elderly, get this, is against the will of God. Yikes. So it's not just like, oh man, go to grandpa and grandma's house. That's lame. They're lame. They're boring. Oh, they're just going to tell me the same fishing story again. Our hearts go there. And I can tell you because I've now lived through all my grandparents. And I remember having all those, and I was like, oh, we got to go to Grammy and Pops again. Oh. And my heart would just be in a place where I was like, I didn't hate them. I wasn't rude to them externally. But man, how can we respect those who are older? And then he goes on. Talk to younger men as you would your own brothers. Treat older women as you would your mother. And treat younger women with all the purity as you would your own sisters. The command is to treat people with the care and consideration that you would treat someone who is your family and who you are closest to. Now, not necessarily with the familiarity that you treat. So when it talks about treat younger men as you would your brothers. Yeah, don't be, a lot of times we don't treat our younger brothers very well, do we? Right? What he's saying here is family is the closest thing you've got. And some of our families are a mess. And some of our families are not the highest priority for us, but God put us in families and designed us to be in families for a reason, and they are meant to be close. They are meant to be treasured. And so Paul is using this example for Timothy, going, look, explain this to them that the church is to care for each other as they should be caring for those who are closest to them. Those who are you share DNA with relatives. You are linked, whether you like it or not. That should mean something. And so here, what Paul is saying is, the people around you, look at the person next to you. Now look at the person to the other next of you. They should mean something to you. You should look to them and care for them. And here's how you should care for them. Talk to younger men as you would your own brothers. Treat older women as you would your mom. Treat younger women with all the purity of your own sisters. Okay? Then he goes on. Take care of any widow who has no one else to care for her. But if she has children or grandchildren, listen to this, if she has children or grandchildren, their first responsibility is to show godliness at home and repay their parents for taking care of them. This is something that pleases God. Let's read that again. If she has children or grandchildren, their first responsibility is to show godliness. So it's attached to your godly walk, your spiritual walk. To show godliness at home and repay their parents by taking care of them. This is something that pleases God. Want to know how to please God? Care for those who cared for you. Who are some of the people that care for you? Like provide for you, meet your needs, protect you. Who? Mom and dad. Who else? Grandma, grandpa? Anything else?
The lunch board.
The what? The what?
The lunch board.
What?
People who serve food at school.
People who serve food at school? Sure. Teachers? Aunts and uncles? Brothers? Sisters? Friends? Okay? Now, there are varying degrees to which people know you and are engaged with you and are part of your life. Those who care for you, okay, and here what Paul is talking about, he's going, Tim, tell them that their responsibility, their first responsibility is to care for those who cared for them. What I saw my parents do, what I saw Laura's parents do, is care for those who cared for them. And there is something beautiful and unique in the reality of, at one point, Grammy was changing my mom's diapers, and then later in life, my mom was changing Grammy's. And there's an honoring there. And I realize there's like, oh, that'd be weird. Okay. But there's an honoring there that is so biblical. That is so much God's intent. And here is the order. Here's the directive of going, look, you're not making these decisions now. This is not a situation that any of you are in right now, and this isn't pressure on you, like, oh, get ready. But this is something for you to set your heart and going, how am I going to care for those who care for me? And right now, there are other ways. Your friendships, the people in your schools, and how you can care for those who are in need. But here, what Paul is pointing out to Timothy, going, look, you need to speak to these young people, meaning younger adults, whose parents are aging, whose parents are in need, for these widows who don't have anyone. Man, it's time to repay. And not just monetarily. Not just like, okay, I'll make a donation, but repay emotionally. And we're going to talk more about that in just a second. Now, a true widow is a woman who is truly alone in this world, has placed her hope in God. She prays night and day, asking God for his help. Now, Paul's not saying, and for unbelievers, no help. Non-Christian widows, out of luck. No. There's plenty of other things that God calls us to where we're to care for them as well. Here, what Paul is talking about, he's speaking to a priority, and we're going to see what priority he's given them later. This priority for these widows in the church who have demonstrated a heart for God, who have demonstrated a heart for others. But, oh, I forgot the W in widow. But the widow who lives only for pleasure is spiritually dead even while she lives. Give these instructions to the church so that no one will be open to criticism. Okay, so these last two verses, he speaks pretty specifically about, all right, help the widow who has been faithful, who prays, who is committed to God, and then these widows who are just living for themselves, they're just living for pleasure. Look, they're dead spiritually because they've lost it. And he's being specific about this. He's making a point here so that there is some clarification, because sometimes, have you ever taken something too literally? Right? So Paul is going, look, care for widows. And people could be like, oh, widows, any widow. Okay, I'm just supposed to. And people could be taken advantage of by these widows who are trying to work the system and trying to. And so Paul is being specific here, going, Timothy, clarify who these widows are. Because to take something too literally, you could end up in a strange place. Well, kind of like this. Write the following words in alphabetical order. See what he did there? This is a pretty clever first grader, I think. Or second grade, whatever this is. He wrote each of the words in alphabetical order. Okay, or you could take this one literally. It means pull close to the curb. The sign says, hug curb when leaving. So he, it looks like Caden. Or how about this one? Drawbridge. Or here, how about this one? If your dog does a poo, please put it in the litter bin. Hey, that's what it says. He's just doing what it says. Or this knucklehead took this way too literally. Okay, so anyway, Paul is clarifying here because he knows that sometimes, we could take something literally, and so when Paul is encouraging them, hey, care for the widows, he's going, look, there are going to be situations where somebody tries to take advantage or someone is not in the place in life where they should be or doing what they should do, but, you are called to care. So the point is, we are called to care for each other as the church, even when we're not related. We're supposed to care for one another as family. And he gives that example, as you would your mother, as you would your father, we're supposed to care for one another as family, even when you're not related. But then there's the obvious. As the church, we're called to care for each other as family because we are related. And sometimes this gets overlooked because, as I said before, there's the assumption that you are honoring your father and mother. There's the assumption that there's the recognition of how close family is and the way we're supposed to love our family. But that gets overlooked because we get tired of our family. Or we start justifying and going, well, I don't have to treat my sister nice. She's stupid. I don't have to treat my brother nice. He bugs me. And so we overlook those things and we dismiss them. But here, we're about to see, we're called to care for one another as the church, as family, because we are related. It says this in verse 8, but those who won't care for their relatives, especially those in their own household, have denied true faith. Such people are worse than unbelievers. Is Paul just being dramatic here? That's a pretty big statement. He's going, look, if you don't care for the people in your house, you're worse than an unbeliever. Really? But I go to church. Man, I sing the songs every week, even though I don't like them. I go to church and I sit through all the messages and I close my eyes when I pray and I do all these things. Why would Paul say that I'm worse than an unbeliever just because I don't care about family? Just because I don't take care of the people that are in my home? Just because I don't care about what happens to my parents when they get elder? And what Paul is throwing out here is people who are not caring for family, you've missed it. You've missed it, and you've missed it at really core levels. All the way back to honor your father and mother. We're told that that's the first commandment with a promise. That you fulfill that, you will then do well in the world. You'll do well in life. But if you throw that away, if you start going, I don't need to care for the people in my home. I don't need to care for my relatives. I don't need to care for those around me. Man, you have missed it in some pretty deep ways. And it means you're living in contradiction to what you say you believe. So yeah, you can say you believe in God. You can say, and it's really this way in all areas of our faith where we can say we believe all kinds of stuff. What are your actions? What are you actually living out? And when it says those who won't care for their relatives, especially in their household, that word care is not just financial care. It's emotional care. It's spiritual care. And I want you to think about this real practically in your own life. How much do you care about your brother and sister's spiritual well-being? How much do you care about your mom and your dad and how they're doing in being encouraged, in bringing hope, in speaking hope into their lives? What does that look like for you? If you're anything like me, when I was growing up, it was not a priority. It was not something I was walking around going, let me see how I can encourage my dad. It was more like, let me see if I can get away with not taking the trash out. And then later on, I guess I didn't encourage my dad, right? It's not always a priority. It should be. Because it's not just talking about caring for them financially and giving them stuff that you don't have the resources to give them anyway. But how can you care for your family? Because it says especially those who live in your house, especially those that you're living with. So there's going to be a list. Well, let's look at this. A widow who is put on the list. So there's this list, right? They've created a list. Somebody got a piece of paper and some sort of writing utensil, and they start writing down names. Okay, actual names. This was a very practical thing. A widow who is put on the list for support must be a woman who's at least 60 years old and was faithful to her husband. She must be well respected by everyone because of the good she's done. Has she brought her children up well? Has she been kind to strangers and served others humbly? Has she helped those who are in trouble? Has she always been ready to do good? This is the person who gets put on the list. So there's some qualifications. There's an expectation of, hey, this is the kind of person that we should be looking to help and we should be looking to encourage but the reason there's these qualifications is it's a two-way list. It's a two-way commitment that the church is going to commit to the widow, we are going to provide for your needs. And then the flip side to that is the widow is committing to the church. The widow is committing to living a life of caring for others, living a life that honors God, living a life that is upstanding in the community. So, you do not want to end up on this list if this is not something that you're ready to live up to, okay? Which leads to one of the problems. Younger widows should not be put on the list because their physical desires are going to overpower their devotion to Christ and they will want to remarry. Then they would be guilty of breaking the previous pledge. The previous pledge is, I am going to receive assistance from the church and I'm going to live committed to Christ and committed to the church alone. Committed to living according to what God calls me to through the church. So here, he's going, look, younger women, they're still in a place where their mind is going, ooh, well, how can I still make do something with my life? I'm still young. I'm still in my prime. Who can I get together? Well, maybe I can remarry. And their focus is going to be so scattered. He's going, look, don't put young women on the list. Even if they're widows, don't put young women on the list if they're less than 60 years old because they still don't know what they want. They still don't know what they're going to need. They still don't know what they're going to go after. And so Paul continues, and if they are on the list, so if these younger women are on the list, they'll learn to be lazy and spend their time gossiping from house to house, meddling in other people's business and talking about things they shouldn't. So the second reason Paul says to not put them on the list is, one, because their focus is going to be on what they're going to do with their life, and so it's going to be pretty self-focused. And the second is, man, you start providing for people who should and could provide for themselves, there's a real possibility of just like, what? I'm going to get a check every month? And we see this in our culture, right? People who are, not all people, I mean, of course, but people who, get an unemployment check or a welfare check and there are those who need it and are responsible with it and are working toward doing whatever they can in their life. And then there are those like, I'm going to get a check every month and I don't have to do anything. And it promotes laziness, and laziness leads to wandering around, gossiping, and doing all these things. So, here's Paul's solution. Advise these younger women to marry again, have kids, take care of their homes. Then the enemy won't be able to say anything about them. For I'm afraid that some of them have already gone astray and now follow Satan. See, in this letter, Paul is addressing all kinds of things to Timothy that he knows are going on. So there were already these young women who were working the system and getting what they got so that they could just hang out, so that they didn't have to do anything. If a woman is a believer, if a woman who is a believer has relatives who are widows, she must take care of them and not put the responsibility on the church. Then the church can care for the widows who are truly alone. So, in conclusion, Paul is going, look, if a widow has family, her family is responsible for taking care of her. We, whether it's an active relative or not, we are called to care for each other. As the church, we are called to care for those even if we're not relatives and because we are relatives. And so, walking out of here today, I told you some of this is like future thought. Like one day, you're going to be in your 50s, your parents are going to be in their 70s or 80s, and the likelihood of them needing help is probably certain. How will you honor your father and mother? How will you care for them in that situation? And then, who are the groups of people, apart from widows, in your life that might fall under that category of those in need? People at your school, friends, siblings who are in need. And again, not just financial need, not just like, oh, I need to buy them lunch. Maybe that's a way that you could support them and help them. Maybe it's the one who is socially bankrupt. Kid at school who has no friends, who is rejected by everybody. Someone that you could come alongside and you could encourage. That kid in class who just cannot pass that math test and you ace every one. How could you come alongside them and care for them and show compassion? Because we are called to care for the people around us. And so, God, I pray that you would stir this up in our heart, that we would not just settle back and care for ourselves, but we would look for how we can care for others. God, give us discernment on how to care for others, that it's not just about handouts and doing everything for everybody, but God, give us the discernment when we see someone in need. And God, I pray that you would do the future work in our heart, that we would care for those in our house. We would care for future kids and future old parents and future situations where it may not be convenient, it may be really difficult. But God, that our heart would be to honor you by honoring those who have cared for us. So God, do that work in our lives right now, in Jesus' name. Amen.